There's a, how do I explain it?
We have to ask ourselves the question, can we see unification here? Let's define matter content in the form of omega 0 tensored in the spinors, which is a fancy way of saying spinors, together with a copy of the one forms tensored in the spinors. And let me come up with two other copies of the same data. Omega d minus 1 just by duality. So imagine that there's a Hodge star operator.
Not the Hodge star operator.
And when I was a little kid, I had this Soma cube.
This, when I was a little kid, I had a Soma cube. The reason I stopped this 4-hour video on the theory of everything, to go back to when he was a kid with this, well, he's going to explain it. Well, let's let him explain it.
I don't know if you ever played with one of these things. They're fantastic. And I later found out that this guy who invented the Soma cube, which you have to put together pieces, there was one piece that looked like this object. And he was like this amazing guy in the resistance during World War II. So I would like to name this the somatic complex, after, I guess his name is Piet Hein, I think. So this complex, I'm going to choose to start filling in some operators. The exterior derivative coupled to a connection, but in the case of spinors, we're going to put a slash through it. Let's make...
Look, some of you are, I would say, bemused by this gentleman's...
This is the identity. We'd now like to come up with a second operator here. And this second operator here should have the property that the complex should be exact, and the obstruction to it being a true complex, to nilpotency, should be exactly the generalization of the Einstein equations, thus unifying the spinorial matter with the intrinsic replacement for the curvature equations.
Now, I'm summarizing this gentleman's theory. So, this is very difficult to do in 15 minutes, but he will appreciate it. His lecture, which is on YouTube, he's come out with COVID-19 and expressed it, because it'll be lost otherwise, and he's talking to an audience. You know, it's not a basketball game where people are rah-rah in the stadiums, but there's an audience, and the people in the audience have already corrected him on some minute, which means they're following the game. The mirror neurons are firing well. So just as we have for 100 IQ and below sports games, this is, if you like, the final of 100 IQ and above, representation of giants in the game of basketball, or Babe Ruth, who can hit home runs. So this gentleman is, well, I come from New Zealand, so we had Hillary that went to the Everest with Tupa Sing Sing and some oxygen bottles, or maybe not, and then to the South Island on tractors instead of dogs, which you could eat. So this gentleman is doing a very similar thing. So my job, after Joe Rogan brought out a very concise version of what he's talking about, is to reanalyze it and to put it into a popular form. And I'm not saying this video is going to go viral, but
well,
what I am saying is
you know
this.
that dA composed with itself is going to be the curvature. We know that we want that to be hit by a Shiab operator.
The point is this. The gentleman that's speaking will be watching this video. So I'm going to give him the theory of everything in the next 10 minutes so that the left hand and the right hand meet very quickly. The theory of everything, and I call it the final theory of everything. So imagine two people at a public bar. And Italy's probably a good case at this time. So the ability for a barroom table filled with glasses, and I use the champagne coupe, which is a celebratory, and you can stack them up and pour champagne in the top of them, and it flows down to the other ones. But anyway, two individuals explaining themselves with regards to 4 dimensions, and he talks about this in his theory, and another 10 dimensions, which uses rulers and protractors. But we won't get lost on the, I say geometry, but so 2 individuals. So what he's trying to do is unify the standard, what's called the standard model. So you got the weak and the strong nuclear forces, and you have gravity and electromagnetism. And the thing is, gravity doesn't sort of fit into it. So he talks about quantization of gravity, and he's going through his derivations, da da da. So on the barroom table, just as the human brain, and this is where humour comes in, and that's why when he had an interaction with Joe Rogan in the comics, because I have a theory on, in the early days, slapstick, because leadership is the key part of production of the next generation. So slapstick, you're not going to follow that leader off a cliff. Then the person who can't speak correctly, you're not going to follow them either. So that's a second. The third is political assassination. That's where Trump sort of talks about Marco Rubio, and splashes the water everywhere. So what's now happening with Fauci and stuff is, 10 years, this virus is going to have an influence, maybe 15 or 25, could even be longer, globally. So what we're experiencing today is just the beginning of something. Anyway, my point is this gentleman has decided to express himself, and this is from Oxford University, and one of his gurus is a guy called Roger Penrose. Well, he's now Sir Roger Penrose, but he wrote a book, The Emperor's New Mind, and I also read a book by Hawkins. So those 2 books were something I read in Wellington at Victoria University in New Zealand, maybe in 1991. They pretty much were published about that time. When I was heading to World Debating Championships as a judge in Dublin, Ireland in 1992, I rang Emperor's New Mind's author, Roger Penrose, and shared with him with regards to scaling and mapping. Anyway, an insight. So this gentleman's brother had done some work, and obviously he's referring to plagiarism from a Nobel laureate, but all I'm saying is that there's some pedigree from my perspective with regards to AI, artificial intelligence, and the subject that we're talking about. So if you're following along with what we're saying, we're at the point of the ability of 2 people to have a conversation in the bar room over a table and stack the glasses with regards to defining the X, Y, Z. Now the most important part, and this is where the unification in the standard model comes, is that there's a collapse factor that happens. As you stack glasses up on a beer room or a table of, it will collapse from gravity. Just as the human mind will entertain 2 thoughts, and then when one of them collapses, we'll laugh at that, and then we know which way we're going to progress into the future. So I just share it with you because the final theory of everything, and I'm in a sense saying that two people having a discussion in a bar, stacking up glasses, using gravity to conclude, if you like, or decide the argument. Yeah. So this gentleman has asked the world to critique his presentation, and he mentioned early on in Joe Rogan's he doesn't want Stefan Molyneux in his world because he scares him. So you can substitute Stefan and the northern hemispheres and have a chat in the southern hemisphere, because I can introduce you to individuals in New Zealand, Aotearoa, the long white cloud. I'm only the heart, if you like. The intellect of the southern hemisphere resides within a culture called Māori. And if I was to use one of your sayings, unity, there's a Māori word for that. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there and turn this video off. But, well, let's hear a little bit more to say.
And if Sheev is a derivation, you can start to see that that's going to be curvature, so you want something like FA followed by Sheev over here to cancel. Then you think, okay, well, how am I going to get at getting this augmented torsion? And then you realize that the information in the inhomogeneous gauge group, you actually have information not for one connection, but for two connections. So in one case, I can do plus star to pick up the A sub pi. But I'm also going to have a derivative operator if I just do a star operation. So I need another derivative operator to kill it off here. So I'm going to take minus the derivative with respect to the connection H inverse dA naught H, which defines the connection one form as well as having the same derivative coming from the Levi-Civita connection on U.
Look, it's not fair to leave you with the mathematics, physics that he's talking about. And I refrain from using the word espouse, but he's talking about. Because when I saw him in Joe Rogan's sense, it was like a Christmas present unopened. Here, it's opened, and it's a child that's experienced 15 years of pleasure from that present. So you're seeing this gentleman in full flight.
So in other words, I have two derivative operators here. I have two add-valued one forms. The difference between them is going to be of 0th order, and it's going to be precisely the augmented torsion. And that's the same game I'm going to repeat here.
So if I could summate, he feels that Einstein defines us to the solar system, and his theory allows us to look beyond the solar system to other star groups and stuff like that. The maths and the science that he talks about is well trodden. So those of you like the Indian gentleman that he talks about, I pronounce it wrong, but I'm not going to say it's Rain Man, but and he was an incredible mathematician, the Indian chap, and interacted variously. This guy's giving a lecture in the UK, but he's from America, so those are the things. And here we are in New Zealand. I've talked to Kerr, who's one of the people that did the black hole. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Rod Young out, New Zealand. Aotearoa, 2000.